Okay, it is 8:30, so here I am doing my live presentation for you about how does aerobic training affect performance. So to talk about this, what I'm going to actually run through is the aerobic energy system. I'm going to talk to you about aerobic training. I'm going to talk to you about applying the principles of training to aerobic training. And then I'm also going to talk to you about the aerobic adaptations that occur that then improve performance. Now to do this, we have to start with ATP. Now ATP is our molecule that we use for all energy. For all of our movement, we need to use ATP. And essentially, all of your energy systems, they exist to create this molecule, and they're all working all the time. So your aerobic energy system is always working. But the thing about the aerobic energy system is that it always needs to have oxygen in order for it to actually produce ATP. And so this is why we have our immediate physiological responses to exercise, because your body is trying to get more oxygen to your muscle cells where it's needed. And until those adaptations or those responses happen, until you have that increase in heart rate, that increase in breathing rate, until you have your change in blood flow to send more blood to that working muscle, until that happens, you're not getting more oxygen, and therefore your aerobic energy system can't produce all the ATP that's needed for your exercise to continue. And so while your body is waiting for those things to happen, which can take up to 3 minutes for your body to fully adjust to the intensity of what you're doing, that's when your anaerobic energy systems are going to be being used to just provide that ATP until your body has adapted. So this is where we're going to start. We always start with ATP. And so today we're focusing on the aerobic training and the physiological adaptations that occur based on that training. And that all has to do with the aerobic energy system. Okay, and so it's about making the aerobic energy system produce more ATP faster, and that to do that, it requires more oxygen. So the aerobic energy system lasts basically forever. It can go for as long as it likes. It will decrease when the muscle runs out of carbohydrates for sure, because ATP is produced a lot slower when it's coming from fats. So when we're using our carbohydrates, that system is faster at producing ATP using oxygen than fats are, and that's why we hit that wall that exists when we've been exercising for a long time. Now, as a waste product, the aerobic energy system only produces water and carbon dioxide, both of which are really easy to get rid of, which makes the aerobic system really our ideal energy system to be used for exercise. And that's what your body really wants to use. And so whenever you go above that 85% maximum heart rate, and you start to use your anaerobic systems, your body starts to fatigue and will come back into your aerobic energy system. And when you're in your aerobic energy system, it allows you to recover those anaerobic systems, but your body really prefers to be in there. And so that's why when we're talking about aerobic training is going to happen just below that 85% intensity to make sure you're really still working your aerobic energy system, to make sure you're working on getting your body to adjust at sending as much oxygen to the muscles that are working as possible. So given the aerobic energy system lasts a long time, it then makes sense that all of the training methods for the aerobic training also last a long time. So your continuous training, your long interval training, your circuit training, any training that is aerobic, any of your cardiorespiratory training or cardiovascular training, they're all aerobic training, and that's all generally long. So that's not a short sprint, it's not a repetitive short sprint, it's repetitive longer sprints, it's repetitive running for a long period of time. It's something that goes long because that's the way that the aerobic energy system works, is that it goes for a long time. Now, remembering the aerobic energy system is also helpful when considering all of the principles of training and applying it to aerobic training. So specificity is all about the muscles that are used and the length of the training. So we want to make sure we're training for a long period of time, and That time will depend on the performance you're after. So if you're after a performance in a marathon, then your training should be at least as long as a marathon to make sure that you're really working at getting better at that marathon. You might do some half marathons if you want to work on the last bit of your marathon and really push yourself. But your training and your adaptations that come with your training are specific to how long you train, they're specific to the intensity that you train at, they're specific to the speed at which you train, they're specific to the muscles that you use in your training. And so it's really important when you're doing training and you're thinking about aerobic training that you focus on doing aerobic training that works the muscles that are used for the sport, that are used in an aerobic capacity. Next, I want to talk about thresholds. So thresholds, basically you want your training to be large enough that it causes a response, and that's large enough in the sense of workload. Okay, you want it to really have a big workload so that it produces a stress, which then causes the adaptations that we're going to talk about in a minute. So the more that you can stress it, so the closer you are to the top of the 85%, the more that your body will adapt and change, because it's the more you're stressing your cardiorespiratory and cardiovascular systems by doing that. So the maximum rate at which your aerobic energy system can really handle is getting the oxygen it needs is about 85%. Once you start going beyond that, your body's not getting as much oxygen as it needs, and so it has to start using the other energy systems. And so if you're training for aerobic performance, you want to train the aerobic energy system and really work it to its max and stress it. You want it to be up at its upper limits of what it can do in terms of the oxygen that's getting to it and the amount of ATP it's producing to make sure that you're getting the best adaptations from it. You also then want to think about variety. So when you're training for aerobic performances, if I'm training for a bike ride, I want to be specific and be doing lots of bike riding, but I would change even the type of bikes. I might go outside and do a road bike ride. I might do some stuff in the gym on a bike. I might go mountain biking, but then I also might go for a run, because even though it's not cycling, it still is working my legs and it's still aerobic, and so I'm still going to get some benefits from it. What I also might do is change the intensities of my training, change whether I'm doing fartlek training or whether I'm doing long continuous training or if I'm doing long interval training. They're the kinds of things that you can change up in an aerobic training session to really adapt the stresses that you're putting on your body. Because if you're only ever getting into the gym, jumping on a bike and doing exactly the same workout over and over again, your body will adapt to that, and then that's all it will do. It will just adapt the exact bits of the muscle that it's using over and over and over again for that exercise. They're the ones that get adapted. But if in a performance you're going to be riding on the road and there's hills and there's ups and downs, you have to turn and swerve, your body hasn't adapted to those things. And so you need the variety to make sure you're covering all the different bits that are going to come in your performance. And of course, when we're talking about the stresses and adaptations that come, progressive overload is really key. So progressive overload is all about the fact that when you stress your body and it gets this load that's on it and it's struggling to manage that, your body goes, okay, if I'm constantly getting this stress, I need to do something about that. And so it adapts in a particular way to make that stress easier. So we'll go through those in just a minute, but your adaptations are happening so that you get more oxygen to your aerobic energy system, which then is the adaptations you're after for aerobic performance. And so this adaptation means that you can then bear a larger load at the same percentage maximum heart rate, for example. So my 85% maximum heart rate might mean that I'm doing a 10-kilometer run in 1 hour. And then I'm going to do that for 2 weeks maybe, and then suddenly my 10-kilometer in 1 hour is actually quite easy. I need to increase that to either 12 or 14 kilometers in that hour, or maybe start actually running for longer. So maybe I'll run for an hour and a half now, and that's a change in the load, which then causes a greater stress on your body, which will then cause the further adaptations. And so it's really about utilizing all these principles of training to change the types of stress that are going on your body to make sure that you're getting the best adaptations that you can. Now, of course, if you stop training, you're going to have reversibility effects, and so you're going to lose all your adaptations, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And that's the same as if you get old and also if you stop training. So right now, with everyone being stuck in their house, it's quite hard to maintain the same intensities and levels and workloads of training that you used to be able to do when you could just go to the gym, or when you could easily go down to the park or go and play soccer with your mates. Those things you can't do anymore, and so you have to think about other ways to do your training to avoid reversibility. And the final principle of training is warm-ups and cool-downs. For the aerobic training and aerobic adaptations, your warm-up is really about stimulating those immediate physiological responses to exercise before your training starts, so that you actually already have increased your heart rate, you've already increased that rate of breath, you've increased how fast your blood is flowing around your body, you've increased the amount of blood flow that's going to the muscles that need it. And so that warm-up is about getting those things happening, so that when you then go and perform, you don't have to wait that 3 minutes for your body to adapt. It's already adapted and ready to go. Now, of course, after your event, you have your cool down. Now, for the aerobic energy system and the aerobic training and aerobic performances, your cool down is really about removing the extra fluid that you've now sent to your muscles. So if I was riding my bike for an hour, what happens is that I'm sending lots of blood and lots of liquid is going into my muscles in my legs, so that I can move the oxygen around better and so that my enzymes are working better down there. And if I then just stop, that fluid will stay there, because if I'm not pumping the muscles to really move the blood back up to my heart, it's going to mean that there's more liquid in my legs. It's going to mean that my lymphatic system is not pushing that liquid up either. And so we do a cool down afterwards to make sure that we actually bring all that liquid, which includes all the waste products and stuff, because that's where they sit, is in the liquids, back up to the heart to get cleansed out and get dealt with. We'll breathe back out all of our carbon dioxide. If we have lactate, all that will be dealt with as well. So they're your principles of training and applying them to aerobic training. And of course, those principles are what then causes all of the physiological adaptations. So those principles applied to training cause the adaptations. And all of your adaptations for the aerobic aerobic training and aerobic performances, they're all about increasing the rate at which the aerobic, so the aerobic energy system, we're talking about increasing the rate at which it can produce ATP. So to do that, the number one thing that your body needs to do is get more oxygen to your muscles. And so to do that, we're going to increase our hemoglobin in our blood. Okay, that increase in hemoglobin means that there's more oxygen that can be carried around per little bit of unit of blood as it's traveling around your body. You're also, inside your cells, going to have more myoglobin, which is the thing that carries oxygen around in your muscles. And so that's all about transporting oxygen, getting it into and transporting around your blood, and then transporting it within your muscle cell itself. We're also going to have increases in the number of capillaries, particularly around the muscles that are being trained, right? So your adaptations are specific to your training. And so if I've trained my leg muscles, then I'm going to have more capillaries in my leg muscles. And that also is about getting more oxygen to my muscles, because I can now have more blood going there at any one time. The surface area for the transportation of the oxygen across from the blood into the muscles has increased. And the same in terms of the surface area for getting carbon dioxide out, and maybe even removing the water out, so that you can continue to use this aerobic energy system as best as you can. You also are going to have a stronger and larger heart, right? So your ventricles are going to get bigger so that they can pump out more blood at once. The walls of your heart get thicker so that those contractions are stronger and more forceful, so that the rate at which the blood travels is faster. And that's all about getting more blood traveling faster around your body per heartbeat. And that means that you're getting more blood moving, which has more hemoglobin in it, getting more oxygen in it, and getting it to your muscle where it's needed, so that the aerobic energy system can produce more ATP faster. Okay, now this also has that natural result of reducing the resting heart rate that you need, because if you have a stronger heart, a larger heart, if you have more hemoglobin and you can transport more oxygen per bit of blood, and you can transport that oxygen faster and further with each contraction, and then means that for any workload, for any amount of ATP that needs to be produced, you actually don't need to contract your heart as often or as fast in order to get the same amount of oxygen to your muscle cells. And so that means that when you're resting, your heart rate goes down. It also means that those adaptations, right, that you're talking about those progressive overload here. If I was training at my 10 kilometers in that hour and I have these adaptations that happen, suddenly my heart rate is no longer 85% of my maximum heart rate. It's going to go down. It might go down to 70. It could go down to 60 depending on how well I've been doing my training. And so my heart rate now is less, and therefore the intensity for me is less. Even though the workload is the same, the intensity has actually decreased. And so in order to increase my intensity, I have to increase my workload. And that then allows me to cause further adaptations. And that same process will happen where I'll have more hemoglobin, more myoglobin, more capillaries traveling around, a bigger and a faster and a stronger heart, allowing for the blood flow to move faster, getting more oxygen to our aerobic energy system so it can produce more ATP at a faster rate. Now, within the actual muscle cells themselves, so other than the myoglobin that's transporting the oxygen around, we also are going to have an increase in mitochondria, which is the place where your body is using the oxygen to break down the carbohydrates and to break down the fat to produce the ATP. So we're going to have more of those around your muscle cells so that there's more places where we have these breaking downs of our energy into ATP for us. So more mitochondria, and we're also going to increase the aerobic, so our aerobic enzymes. And they're the enzymes that are used in the Krebs cycle, the enzymes that are used in the aerobic glycolysis as we're breaking down carbohydrates to make ATP. We're going to have more of those. So we have more of those, partly because we have more mitochondria. And so if we have more mitochondria, we're going to need more enzymes in them. And that is all about speeding up the aerobic energy system so that it can produce more ATP at a faster rate. So all of these adaptations that are happening, so we have a bigger and a stronger heart. We have more hemoglobin. We have more myoglobin. We have more capillaries around our lungs and also around our muscles that are being trained. That's all about transporting oxygen to your muscle cells and getting that oxygen then to the mitochondria. And then in the mitochondria, we're going to have more mitochondria and we're going to have more aerobic enzymes in order to speed up the rate at which your muscles can use the aerobic energy system to produce ATP. And the faster you can produce ATP using your aerobic energy system means the larger the workload you can do and the longer you can do that workload before you start to kick in your anaerobic energy systems, which are the ones that are going to cause fatigue. So all about increasing oxygen so that the aerobic energy system can make more ATP faster. This means better performance because there is less reliance on the anaerobic systems which produce waste products that reduce performance. And it means that your workloads that used to be 85% are now 60% and therefore easier, and that can even improve your mental focus and other things in the game, your awareness of everything else, because you're not as fatigued, you're not as tired, allowing you to actually perform your skills better and allowing you to perform overall better because you can actually maintain higher intensities or higher workloads for longer using your aerobic energy system. So there you are, it all connects. Your aerobic energy system is related to your aerobic training, which is all using the principles of training to create aerobic adaptations. And those aerobic adaptations are all about getting more oxygen to your cells and improving the rate at which the aerobic energy system can produce ATP. That's it, guys. I'm so glad that lots of you came and joined me to watch what I was doing here today. I will hopefully do more of these as everyone is locked up in houses and stuff, and we're doing a lot of remote teaching, so I thought I would do this. It would help people out. Please continue to send in questions for me. I would love to actually answer the stuff that you need help with. I've started with this because this was the first bit that actually came up in the comments that I saw on my post, where people were asking for me to address factors affecting performance. And then I had a bunch of people who actually asked specifically around addressing, how does training affect performance? And then someone even asked specifically around that learn to that asked you to make those connections. And I actually think it's a really great way for you to learn it and for teachers to teach it, to actually go through and do it by energy system or do it by type of training, and actually just connect it all at once as you're presenting it, like I did today, rather than necessarily doing the I can see you asking for Q&As. I don't quite have that much time, but send your questions. I will answer them. Yeah, but so rather than going through all the energy systems and all the different types of training, but to actually just make the connections as you're doing it is really a great thing to do. So thank you guys so much for coming. I will obviously make this available straight afterwards on Facebook for those people who missed it live. But I want to thank you guys so much for showing up. Thank you for engaging with this, and I'll try and produce as much as I can for you over the next, could be a few months, I suspect, where you guys are having to work remotely. So please, I'll do what I can. Send your questions. I'll answer as many as I can. And for now, I'll see you in a couple of days, probably. See ya.